Schumacher, a member of the church development team. We're here with Bonnie Greene, and Bonnie is from Ebenezer and Farmersburg United Methodist Church. I think you're a member at Ebenezer, right?
Yes.
And she is part of a ministry at that church or those churches called JAM, Jesus and Me. So Bonnie, tell us what Jesus and Me is.
Jesus and Me is our youth program. It is at, we're currently at Farmersburg United Methodist Church. It started at Ebenezer UMC, which is about 4 miles south of town. We're a small country church, and it started there. And
for
we ended up at Farmersburg.
For those who aren't familiar with the geography, tell us, like, where would Ebenezer and Farmersburg be located?
Okay, it's about 20 miles south of Terre Haute, Indiana.
Okay.
Down in the West District.
Very good. And so it began at Ebenezer, and tell us just a little bit about how it developed and how you ended up moving it to Farmersburg.
Okay, it actually came out of our regular youth group. We started several years ago, but as our kids kind of grew up through that youth group, some of their friends started coming. And so we had to get a bus, started busing their friends. And then when our kids kind of grew out of the youth group, it just kept going. Kids were still coming. And we got to the point where we were running 2 routes, bus routes. We were getting about 20 kids at Farmersburg and about 10, 15 kids at Shelburne. And we had a 30-passenger bus, so we'd get too full, so we'd take them and drop them off and go back out and get more kids. So what we did was we were trying to think, okay, what can we do to improve this and make it better? And we were kind of starting to burst at the seams at Ebenezer. So first of all, we did go to Shelburne United Methodist Church and asked them about maybe we'd split the group and just start one at Shelburne and have one at our church. And we looked at the Shelburne's membership and saw that they wouldn't probably be able to support the group. But in the end, they had a young couple that wanted to be involved, so they have since joined our group. So actually 3 churches are represented: Shelburne United Methodist, Ebenezer, and Farmersburg. And so then we went to Farmersburg board, and we share a pastor with Farmersburg. And mind you, we're all within a 6.5 mile space, so we all know each other and everything. So I approached the Farmersburg board and asked them if we couldn't borrow their facility to do our youth program. And so they were good enough to let us do that. And the reason why we did that was because we felt like a lot of the Farmersburg kids could get to the church on their own. You know, parents could bring them, or they could walk or ride their bikes. And so, because we were out in the country, so they couldn't get to us. And so that's how we ended up at Farmersburg. And it's been a really good thing. We're still picking up about 12 to 15 kids at Shelburne and bringing them up.
And how many youth are coming to this ministry?
Well, this year we had an average of 30 come every Wednesday night, and we run from the school calendar. Basically, we start in September and finish like a week or 2 before graduation. But we've saw about 50 different kids this year, and over the last probably 5-6 years, I was looking at some of our attendance sheets and stuff. We've seen probably over 80 different kids.
Wow.
And this is
amazing.
2 small communities, about 1,100
Yeah.
people in each community. So we see a lot of kids, and a big part of these kids have never been involved in a church. I mean, they're not church kids, although we used to call them our unchurched kids. But some of these kids have been coming 4 or 5 years, and they come every Wednesday night. So we quit calling them our unchurched kids, because they are churched kids.
That's beautiful.
And they come, and so we started thinking about them a little different. So we've started actually doing communion once a month now with them, and doing more like a small church. Because we don't entertain them. We come, we eat supper. We do feed them every week. We eat supper, and then at 6:30, and then at 7 we go to class, and they're in class for an hour, and then they go home.
Wow.
Yeah, and we have special events. We do like a special Christmas event, an Easter event. We've taken the kids, actually a couple of years ago, I got to take the older kids to do a mission trip here in Indianapolis. We came up and worked at Lucille Rain's home, and then we worked in the thrift store for the Wheeler mission. And so some of these kids have never done anything like that. So we've been able to do that, and we've taken them to other youth events and stuff like that. And we've also helped with making posters for the Kairos prison ministry, and we do Operation Shoebox every year with the kids. And to work with them.
So they come together at Farmersburg on Wednesday nights, and even though they'd never been involved, many of them, in a church, that's become their church. So in a sense, they have church now as a result of your ministry.
And they'll call it their church.
Their church, yeah. And so one of the ministries that we're really excited about right now in Indiana is the Fresh Expressions model, and I know you were at some training with Fresh Expressions, and so what you're doing is a fresh expression. You didn't realize that's what you were doing, but you have created a church outside the traditional Sunday morning experience for people who prior were unchurched, which is so exciting. So it sounds like Ebenezer must be a large church if it has a youth group of 30 to 50 youth. How many people come to Ebenezer on Sunday mornings?
Well, Farmersburg, Shelburne, and Ebenezer, we probably all run anywhere from 30 to 50 people.
30 to 50 people, but your youth ministry is equally as large.
Yep.
That's remarkable. And so if you were to talk to someone from another church that is a small, perhaps rural church, and they're saying, oh, we couldn't do youth ministry because we're so small, what would you tell them?
I would say that they could do it. You have to form relationships. You just have to have people that are faithful people showing up every week, and the Holy Spirit will bring them, because we haven't recruited. We've never done any kind of recruitment. The kids just come, and I believe it's because we are just being faithful and showing up every week and making relationships with the kids, and the Spirit's just moving. It's awesome to be involved with it.
So Bonnie, can you share with us some examples of lives that have been changed as a result of this ministry? Well,
of course, we may never see all the fruit from our labors, but we have seen some kids that have never prayed, leading in prayer now, because that's kind of one of our missions, is to, if we do nothing but teach them about God and how to pray, I feel like we can give them something to, if they never come back, at least they have that foundation. And so we had 2 young men baptized about this time last year, right at the end of our program, at the end of school last year. And the one boy, him and his sisters and him, have been coming on Sunday morning now to the church. We pick him up and bring him to the church, and he has been wanting his parents to come. And so, of course, when we pick him up, we make connections with the parents and have got to know the parents a little bit. And now, about the last month and a half, his parents have been there about 3 Sundays. They're coming to church now. And I remember the first Sunday, because he would come, very often with his sisters, but the parents wouldn't come. So when they came, the first Sunday they came, he came up to me and he goes, "Thank you, Bonnie, for getting my parents here." And I go, well, Fred, I didn't get your parents here. I said, we've been praying about it. That's what's got them here. And he goes, I know, I've been praying for them. And that's, that just, and he's led prayer in class, and I feel like we're really making a difference, and that the Spirit is working through his life. And
Bonnie, tell us a little bit about what's happened since you began that ministry, and what's next?
well, I attended Charge Conference a couple years ago. I think it was 2017. And John Groves gave us a prayer at the closing of conference. And it just kind of was one of those like moments where it's like, wow, that's a powerful prayer. So I actually wrote it down in my Bible, and the end of the prayer was what really just stood out to me. And it was a challenging prayer. It reads, as Holy Spirit come upon you and disturb you and trouble you and to set before you an impossible task and dare you to do it, until in your desperation you fall on your knees and tarry until he fills you with his power, which alone will enable you to do the task, and then let the peace come. And that I took that prayer home with me and started praying it, and the Lord kind of just laid it upon me to start looking at reaching our Jam kids' parents, because we have relationships with a few of the parents, but not many. And so my thoughts were how to reach them, and so I started praying this prayer, and the idea of a off-site place to have dinner with the families, to do, I actually even came up with a name that I think the Spirit gave me a name called The Table. And so I've started looking into that. Looked at a couple buildings in our town to see if they would work, and I've taken some training. I've been to the dinner church workshop, and so I believe that's where we're going next. We need to reach these kids, because we know if the families are involved, then the kids will be better off. And so we're going to try to reach the parents.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And Bonnie, are you a pastor?
No.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a school bus driver.
A school bus driver?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a pastor to do this?
No, our pastor is involved in our program. He's been there the last 5 years, and he jumped right in and is teaching one of our classes. And then we have a retired pastor that helps. He actually teaches the older. There was a group of older kids that wanted to go deeper into the Bible, so he's teaching an advanced Bible class with them.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, we have a great group of people.
That's great.
Yeah.
But a bus driver, God can use a bus driver.
Yeah.
To start something beautiful.
Yeah.
That reaches unchurched folk.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
God's blessings.
Thank you.